up? What's happening on a Wednesday? It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well, where I was hoping in just a moment to be able to share my screen with you because, Ant, something magical is on my computer screen. Do you know what that something magical is?
On your screen?
Yeah, my computer screen right now.
Oh, yes.
You want to tell the people what it is?
It is your mock draft simulator.
It is not my mock draft simulator. It is the Pro Football Focus is the one that I use. Mock draft simulator. That is because it on this Wednesday is the first of 3 consecutive Wednesdays that young Anthony Haney and I, the fine producer of this radio program, are going to do a mock draft. That's right. It is mock draft 1.0 here on the Hoffman Show. And we are still going to do that mock draft. Unfortunately, just the way we like to do it, where the screen with the mock draft is on the board for the viewer, you on YouTube, to see if you're streaming us on YouTube or if you're watching this later on demand. Sadly, that's not an option because the technology is not allowing it to be an option. So, alas, and they get to stare at our faces while we stare at the big board. And we are officially underway for Mock Draft 1.0. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Chicago Bears are on the clock. The way we're going to do this, Anthony and I are going to work together as a single front office that somehow magically picks for all 32 teams. That also means we have to agree on any trades, etc. We are going to do this over the full next hour. So if you're listening now but are almost to your destination, then definitely check out the podcast later. All right, Ant, here's what we got. I got Caleb Williams on the board at 1-1. He is the overwhelming favorite. He is what is going to happen. For sure in real life. Is that who, do we want to pull a wacky bit? / would you make even an argument for football reasons to do anything other than just take Caleb Williams at number 1 overall?
They're taking Caleb Williams.
Well, we know they're taking Caleb Williams. Would we take Caleb Williams?
Oh, I don't really think it's worth it, to be honest.
To take Caleb?
I mean, for us, it would be, but I'm just saying, are you talking about just for this exercise?
The correct thing to do is take Caleb Williams. I think we're on the same page, and I'm not confusing the hell out of you and thus the audience. No, I don't think there's any logical argument, considering what the Bears have done. If you wanted to 3 months ago be like, I'm a Justin Fields guy, get him Marvin Harrison Jr. and see what happens. Like, okay, I would say that's still probably very silly because at the end of the day, like, you have Caleb Williams as number 1 on the board for most teams, and you should absolutely pretend like you're going to take him, and then maybe last second, like, I don't know, Washington, that draft pick you're offering sounds real good, or those 3 firsts, or, that's what it would cost, is 3 firsts as a starting point of negotiations, and clearly that's not going to happen. And thus, I think both to make the rest of the draft make sense and because it's the right move, you take the guy with the highest upside, you take the guy at the position that you've been searching for your entire 100-year franchise history. You take the guy who has been the number 1 guy for years targeted towards this draft. You take the 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, at number 1. Anthony, I'm going to do it. I've hit draft.
Great.
Let the fun begin.
Let's get it.
Number 2, the Washington Commanders are on the clock. The Washington Commanders.
We are the Commanders.
Are on the clock. All right, I'm GM Hoffman going around the room. Haney, last chance to make your pitch. What do you think? What do you think we should do here?
I think we, as an organization, should go with Jaden Daniels.
Okay, why do you like that option over one of the other quarterbacks?
I like Jaden over Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, specifically because I feel as though where we are at quarterback in today's NFL, we're more so moving to the mobile quarterback, and I think he offers that not only as a dynamic runner, but I feel like he's also shown that he can consistently make the throws that we necessarily want to see. Now, his frame, his I guess inability to sort of kind of take care of himself, that does worry us a little bit. But I think we can coach him up, and I think with time, I think he'll understand that he has to protect himself for the greater good of the team and for his career in general. So I think Jaden Daniels is our guy.
So I think I actually, God, I think at this point I'm probably just going to agree with you. Both because I think it's what's most likely to happen, and I'm kind of interested to see what happens the rest of the draft. But also because, again, I'm very tight between these three guys. And one thing that I believe in with Jaden Daniels, that if the rest of my organization felt really good about him, is I believe in who he is as a person. I believe in who Jaden Daniels is as a competitor. I believe who Jaden Daniels has been as a worker, as someone who has shown the ability to improve, the progression over the 5 years in college from Arizona State on through, obviously, what was a breakout season last year at LSU. I am scared that we're not taking Drake May because there's a chance that dude could be really good, and I think we have some pieces in the building that could help him get to that level. I think that when you look at the size of May, the arm strength, the second reaction ability, which is something that May is great at. Jaden's second reaction is to run. May's is to make a play, if you will, which is a wider variety of outcomes. I think that passing up on that and knowing, like, man, if he's good, we're going to be the team that passed on him is really scary. I also really like McCarthy, as I've discussed a lot. We're not going to go too deep into it now. There's a part of me that just feels safer with him where I'm like, I think if we just get him a little bit, we can bring him along. He knows how to play a secondary role to start, but I think that'll give him time to develop the other parts of his game. And I actually think the upsides there is a lot higher than people realize. And I think he's also like really, really elite on the mental side of it. But I think we're going to go Daniels. So I know that's probably shocking to people who expected me to go in a different direction. But I as of today, I think that's the direction I would go. There is one other thing, though, as we're about to turn the card in, and the Vikings called. The Vikings are offering 11, 23, a 2025 first rounder, and their third rounder next year as well, which is their highest pick. We can't squeeze them for a 2. That's their package for our second pick. Do we want to stay pick and take Daniels, or do we want to entertain that trade with the Vikings?
I believe in this guy, Jaden Daniels.
All right.
I'm going with Jaden.
Hey, Kevin, eat a bag of. We're taking Jaden. So, back to draft a player. Jaden Daniels, which PFF is going to hate because he's stupidly far down on their board for some reason, to the point that I need to actually filter by position to find him. There we go. Jaden Daniels, we are taking him at 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're now on the clock with the New England Patriots at number 3. And we got some teams that are ready to knock down the door. The Vikings are ready to offer that same package that they just offered Washington for 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to do a little bit of a funky bit because PFF doesn't like that trade nearly as much as the real world would. It says it has a 10% chance to be accepted. That's incorrect. But I might force that trade anyway, so I can do that. The Vikings offer an 11-23 round 1 and round 3 next year. Or actually, we can do 129 this year. We'll figure it out. The Raiders are willing to offer 13, 44, and next year's second for 3. We can add in like a 4th next year too. We got the Broncos on the horn. They're willing to offer their first this year and next year. So those are teams 11, 12, and 13. Are there any of those picks that we're interested in for the Patriots? I'll tell you what, Ant. You get to think about that in the break. You get to think about what the New England Patriots could do here. Or do they just take Drake May or J.J. McCarthy? That, when our mock draft 1.0 continues, next on the Hoffman Show. The Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We continue Mock Draft 1.0. We've sorted through the trade offers, and we got one that we like. We're going to trade the number 3 overall pick. We took Caleb Williams 1 with Chicago. Jaden Daniels the pick for us at Washington at number 2 as we do Mock Draft 1.0. We're going to trade with the Minnesota Vikings. We just can't pass up those 2 first-round picks this year for number 3 overall. And we're also going to, well, it doesn't really matter. That's the main point. We're just going to do this, and I'm going to hit offer trade. This trade has been accepted. And now we got the Minnesota Vikings on the clock at 3. And it comes down to Drake May, or do they pull a surprise here and take J.J. McCarthy?
I think they pull a surprise. To me, I think J.J. McCarthy is a better fit with Kevin O'Connell. Just looking at, what Kirk Cousins was able to do in that pro-style offense, I think J.J. McCarthy sort of kind of was in a similar situation. They rely, a lot on the run to set up the play action. And I think J.J. McCarthy, I think he fits that, that model to an extent.
I think he definitely can. The one concern I would have here I think that would ultimately push me towards Drake May. There's 2 big ones, but one is McCarthy's deep ball. He's got a really strong arm, can really zip the ball over the middle of the field. But his deep ball and thus the big playability might be a little bit limited. And for Kirk's, some of his flaws, that dude can cork it deep and puts a really great arc underneath it, understands that you got to let receivers run underneath balls. And Drake May's pretty darn good at that. Jaden is the best deep ball thrower in the class, but Drake can loft it out there. JJ, not as much. That at least at Michigan. Maybe that gets better over time in some of these touch throws. The layering that you do need to have. And I think if I'm Kevin O'Connell and Quessy, the GM, comes to me and says, Drake May's got the highest ceiling in this class. Can you coach him out of the bad habits? I go, that's why you hired me, bro. And I would lean towards Drake May because of that. With that said, I'm like Mr. freaking J.J. McCarthy, and based off of the fact that I love him in a lot of these offenses, the West Coast offenses that we see dominating the league. So if you're like, no, I really like McCarthy as the fit, I'm down to go McCarthy here. And then we got a wild mock draft going.
I mean, the thing is, I do think Drake May offers more upside. And the Vikings, I don't think they're in a win-now kind of situation. So maybe they can,
I see, but I don't know that they're not. They still have Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And you're now on the rookie what you are is you're on the rookie quarterback timeline. Where it's how much can we spend, how good can we be until we got to pay our quarterback. And then we got to rebuild how we make the roster. But I don't think that they're not taking a step back this year. They are being aggressive to get their guy.
I think they'll contend. That's what I think they'll contend.
So if that's the case, do you think McCarthy's a little more ready? In which case, maybe it is McCarthy.
Yeah, I will go McCarthy.
All right. J.J. McCarthy. Ant did it, not me, everybody. J.J. McCarthy, which means Drake May is still on the board at 4.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Cardinals could pull a real wacky, and they could be like, yeah, Kyler, this is your final year here. We'll do a dead money thing later, but and I think it's not that bad to move on from him even after this year, because instead of restructuring him, they haven't spent any money. But I do think this is far more likely a trade situation, because you now have Drake May on the board, 2 teams that are potentially going to be knocking down your door from Denver and Las Vegas, but I think especially Denver, and the Cardinals have a ton of needs. So I would say if I am, also do the Saints try to trade up? Probably not. The Raiders, it's kind of funny because PFF is like, hey, the Patriots want to trade back up. I'm like, I'm sure they do. But I would say Denver's the team that's probably willing to give you the farm here. So I'm gonna take Denver's. Let's say it's the next 2 firsts. So it's 12 this year, 2025 fifth, and if you want to include, a third this year, a third next year, let's say a third next year, something like that for number 4. So Arizona is basically going 4 to 12. Remember, they already have 27 for Houston.
Yeah, they do, but I don't think you can pass up on Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'm actually with you. I'm glad you didn't take the bait.
Yeah,
So
I don't think.
I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. Arizona needs stars. They don't have a lot of stars. They're kind of they've got a little bit of Washington to them where they've got a bunch of dudes that are fine and they need stars. So I say let's take Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think it's a done deal.
Okay. The Chargers want the hell out of that pick. Chargers are getting out of there. Broncos, they do the in-division trade. 2 firsts for 5. Chargers go back to 12.
Chargers are in a situation where they can afford to do that. So
I think the Chargers need multiple players. And I don't think the kind of player that could they take Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors? Absolutely. But I think the kind of player that they want would be more I think there's some guys at 12 that have become interesting for them that we'll obviously get to.
yeah, I think they can afford it.
All right, I'm going 12, trade accepted. All right, the Broncos are on the clock. Broncos take Drake May. Done and done.
Yep.
The Giants are now on the clock. You've got Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Rome Odunze amongst the top players available. Of course, the Giants, they could have used a quarterback. I mean, they could, if May falls to 5, if you're the Giants, do you call the Chargers and be like, want to do a little flipsy daisies? And then the Chargers maybe trade back twice from 5 to 6 and then 6 down to something else? I think that's possible. But we didn't do that. I think they just take the best receiver on the board here, which means you get to pick your flavor of Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors.
I'm going Neighbors.
I tend to agree with that. I think his size-speed combination is just nasty. Although Odunze, I was listening to a scout today on Mina Kimes' show talk about how Odunze has a great ability to just be where he's supposed to be when the ball's in the air. He finds a way to adjust, and that's really tempting. But I think the speed really works well with what they want to do offensively in New York. All right, Tennessee Titans are super interesting because everyone is everyone's mocking Joe Alt to them. I'm not convinced that Joe Alt is a Bill Callahan type of guy. Bill now, of course, the line coach with his son getting the head coaching job. Do we just do what everyone else does, or do we become some independent thinkers here? And a team like Jacksonville, who needs a receiver, do they potentially trade up? Or does someone like a Buffalo come way up in the draft to take Rome Odunze here?
To be honest, I'm thinking like everybody else. Just because I think they want to get back to the identity where they can, smash mouth football. I think that's the Titan identity. And I think going line here, they missed out on Peter Skoronski last year. So I don't know. I think line is their best bet. But I think they're a trade back candidate.
So,
but not to 17 and not to 28.
Jacksonville at 17. I mean, this is an intra-division trade, which rarely happens. And we could just force a trade for someone else. Because I do think that teams, does New Orleans want to get a big time? I mean, I guess they have Olave. There's some teams that if they really want a certain defensive guy, like a defensive lineman, perhaps, that they come up in this draft. Do the Jets be like, hey, we could take a Odunze? Because they signed Mike Williams to a 1-year deal. The Jets are like the most fascinating team in this draft, in my opinion. I think that do the Colts be like, we'll take a Odunze? Obviously intra-division as well. But if you're Tennessee, would you rather have 17 and 48 or 7? You want to go Joe Alt.
I do.
I can't wait till next week when I just get to make my own picks. All right, we'll go Joe Alt at 7. Everyone, again, is mocking Dallas Turner, the edge out of Alabama, to Atlanta at 8. Do we just go that direction?
Yes, sir. They need some pass rush juice.
They do.
I looked at their D-line. They don't really have much. They have Grady Jarrett returning
they don't.
and a whole bunch of backups.
Sneaky. Laiatu Latu's got tremendous pass rush ability, and if you want instant production, he's your guy. He's also got a medical thing, and I'm not sure exactly what that is, so we'll just go Dallas Turner. Let's see if we can get through the top. Well, at least let's get Chicago here. Chicago, they've got Caleb Williams. Now, Rome Odunze still on the board.
Yep.
That is someone that they absolutely could take. But with Rome Odunze on the board, now if you are, I don't know, Jacksonville, we said at 17. If you're Cincinnati at 18. If you are the Colts at 15, do you want to come up and take your guy, Rome Odunze? And if you're Chicago, with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore already there, do you maybe slot back and go offensive tackle or D-line a little bit later? I think I would tend in that direction.
If I'm the Bears, I'm standing pat. I'm drafting Rome Odunze.
Well, I'm going to put you in a bind here then.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a trade to think about during the break.
Bet.
If you are the Indianapolis Colts,
Nope.
you can trade 15 and 82 for 9. And you get Rome Odunze.
Nope.
You sure?
I think I know which direction they sort of kind of want to go.
Oh.
I like receiver is a need of theirs, but I think corner is a bigger need of theirs.
All right, Anthony's gonna have to talk me out of this one in the break. We'll make the pick next on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, time to get a move on an ant for Mock Draft 1.0. We are at number 9. The Chicago Bears are on the clock. They only have 4 picks in this draft. So if they're going to make a trade out, it's going to have to be with a team that's willing to give up multiple picks. You are against doing the Or you are very against the Indianapolis Colts trading up.
Yes.
Those are your boys.
Yep.
Seahawks are kind of loaded at receiver. The Raiders, they've got Devontae Adams already. The Bengals, they could get T. Higgins insurance and trade up for Rome Odunze. Do you like that idea?
Ooh. To trade T. Higgins for Rome?
So, no, you would just trade. That's interesting. Do you trade?
It's only 2 players that have been franchise tagged that haven't been extended. And T. Higgins is one.
Would you trade 18 and T. Higgins for 9? We're getting crazy.
I think I would. I think because it doesn't look like they plan on extending T. Higgins. You still get a guy, in Rome. Granted, you lose out on a first-round draft pick, though.
That's the thing. You're giving up a lot there.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I'm against that now.
Okay, you're against that now. So we take T back, but you could trade T somewhere, which is kind of the point. You could recoup. So let's do this for. Well, no, because I don't want to do that. Let's just say this: you're going to trade 18 and. What do you think that T gets you back? A second? A third?
A second, at least.
Okay. So let's do 18 and 49 for 9.
Let's get it done.
Offer trade.
Sign me up.
Trade accepted. All right, the Bengals are now at 9. They take Rome Odunze. At 10, you got Brock Bowers as the tight end who's somehow sitting there, and then you got offensive line for the Jets. Which direction do you want to go?
I think I want to go with Brock.
I agree with you. I actually think this is way easier than people are making it. Your offensive line does not have to be as good for Aaron Rodgers as it does for Zach Wilson and others. And has Tyron Smith missed a ton of time? Yes. Has Morgan Moses missed some time in recent years or last year? Yes. But that's an outlier for Moses, for one. Typically, he plays through everything. 2, Elijah Vera Tucker gives you some responsibility or some flexibility. And 3, Brock Bowers is a special talent that you could use now and you could use later. And with Aaron Rodgers stomping up a storm, pounding on the table for a guy like Brock Bowers, I'm going to give that guy Brock Bowers. Okay, so now we got the New England Patriots on the board at number 11 after we traded with the Minnesota Vikings for them. They could go quarterback here and take either Bo Nix or Michael Penix because you got the Raiders still coming that it could take one of those guys. Although after that, unless someone trades up, you could still probably get whoever, let's say the Raiders take Penix, you could still probably get Nix at 23 if you wanted. So just probably worth mentioning that there. But they could use everything. So who's your best available player? What do you want to do for New England?
To be honest, I think Gerard Mayo, he's probably going to want to look at the defensive line, to be honest. Do you think drafting Jared Verse?
I think this is too rich for Verse. I also think there's well, if you wanted to go I don't know what they're going to play schematically. Whether they go 3-4-4-3. But he's he could play the edge on either. He's like a big body. I think I'd probably go inside, though, for them. What do you think about interior line and Byron Murphy, who a lot of people, including, I can tell you, Mina Kimes, who joined us earlier today for a recording of Take Command, some of which you will hear later on this very radio show. She thinks Byron Murphy is the best defensive player in the entire draft.
Whoa. There it is, then.
So you go interior D-line, Byron Murphy.
I will go there because I like Braden Fisk as well out of FSU.
Okay, let's go Murphy.
Byron Murphy.
Okay. Chargers now on the clock. they need a lot of stuff. They've got their choice of corner here, all of them still on the board. They could go, it's probably a little rich to go wide receiver here. I mean, Bowers would be an interesting one if they're on the board and he's still on the board. You could go defensive tackle, Johnny Newton out of Illinois. Lot of different options here, but they could also, here's the one, I got to double check their depth chart. Harbaugh is traditionally like taken a lineman early. That's like, this is my nasty guy who I love and is going to be the tone setter for my team. So there's a couple of guys that could potentially go here in that realm. Talisi Fuaga, Troy Fontenot. Like they've got some options here. Any of them stick out to you?
You said Broncos, right?
No, Chargers.
Oh yeah, because they traded. I would say,
like Rashawn Slater is a beast at left tackle.
yeah,
the
you
rest
need
of
one
their,
on the right side. Would you go JC?
You could go J.C. Latham. I might go Fuaga.
Okay.
Although Fontenot from Washington's also very tempting. But I feel like Fuaga's got that nasty streak that Harbaugh likes.
Yeah.
Let's go to Talisi Fuaga there. And again, we have made that trade. Broncos going up to 5 to take somehow Drake May because that's the way it fell.
It's going to happen, man.
13 to the Raiders. They obviously need quarterback. Do they go Penix or Nix here? Or do they pass and try to, at the top of the second round, get Penix in the second?
I think they also may look to trade back. I think you can get Bo Nix or Michael Penix a little later.
So that begs the question, who's the player that's currently on the board that someone is trading up for?
I think the Jags trade up. I think the Jags go get Quinyon Mitchell before the Colts do.
Okay. I don't dislike that. Let's see. We're going to go 17 and
13.
17, but I'm saying on the Jags side, 17, and this is where I don't trust PFF's mock draft simulator always. I'm going to say 116, their extra fourth. Is that enough? No. Third?
Yeah, I think a third might get it done.
Third, Vegas maybe gives back an extra fourth. So something like that. Offer trade accepted. Okay, so now we got the Jags on the clock at 13, and they're going Quinyon Mitchell. I like that. I like that a lot. New Orleans, super interesting. Do they go quarterback? If all of a sudden Nix and Penix are sitting there on the board, do they go quarterback, or do they roll with Carr and just be like, we hope that it goes better than last year? We will continue to look. Obviously, they could protect him. This could be a spot where some of the offensive linemen start to go. We will get to the New Orleans Saints in our mock draft 1.0 next. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We're in the middle of our mock draft 1.0. It's going to carry us for a lot of the first half of the show today, especially because we've got the Masters updates coming at you the top and bottom of the hour, which, it's great to keep you updated, but does eat into our time. So thus, I think we're going to be able to take this a little bit longer, Ant, than we initially anticipated. A good one if you can't stay tuned to listen the entire time to podcasts after the show. We'll put it all together, and instead of just like the hours, we'll put mock draft smushed together. To recap, though, for those of you listening live, of course, right now on the radio, you got Caleb Williams 1 to Chicago, Jaden Daniels 2 to Washington, trade at 3, J.J. McCarthy to Minnesota, Marvin Harrison Jr. 4th to Arizona, Drake May 5th to Denver in a trade, intra-division with the Chargers and Broncos, Malik Neighbors to the Giants at 6, Joe Alt 7 to Tennessee, 8, Dallas Turner to Atlanta, Romadunze 9 to the Bengals in a trade with the Bears, Brock Bowers 10 to the Jets. New England then picking after that trade with Minnesota at 11 takes Byron Murphy II. Then Talisi Fuaga goes to the Chargers at 12, the tackle out of Oregon State. Kenyon Mitchell in a trade. Vegas trades with the Jags. Jacksonville takes Kenyon Mitchell 13. All right, on the clock at 14, we're going to go Troy Fontenot, the very versatile offensive lineman who's going to be a tackle in name but could really play almost anywhere on the line. He's going to be our pick for the New Orleans Saints. They've lost both of their tackles, I believe, this offseason. Then the Colts on the clock at 15, and I think they've got some interesting options. I think one is adding some vertical big speed that Anthony Richardson can just absolutely chuck the ball downfield to, and that would mean Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. But you have another idea, I think, and this is the other position they get targeted a lot, which is corner.
Yeah, I think they go corner here just because last year they got Josh Downs in the second round. I think they really going to lean on him and also Michael Pittman. So I don't think spending a first-round draft pick on a receiver is in their best interest. But I think corner definitely is, and I think they will take Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. He's a big, rangy corner. He's standing at 6'2", and I think they want to look, at a bigger corner just because of what they did last year with Juju Brents, who was on and off the field. But I think they want a corner with some size, with some length, and I think Nate Wiggins fits that build the most.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. In terms of style, I think there's some other corners that a lot of people like more, but Wiggins fits that style. And as we saw with the Commanders and Emmanuel Forbes, you take your guy. You take the one that you think is best. And then you hope it works out better than it did for the Commanders and Emmanuel Forbes, at least as a rookie. Seahawks at 16. I think they are a very interesting team. Like, I think that they could potentially trade out of this pick, try to get back a little bit further into the 20s. But what I think is interesting, Ant, is we've somehow done a draft where I don't feel like anybody is crazy falling here. So in order to trade back, you need someone that someone wants to trade up for. And maybe one of these teams in the back half of the first round is like, some of these tackles that we really like if you're Buffalo and you really like a tackle, or you think Brian Thomas Jr. is your guy to replace Gabe Davis, could Buffalo potentially trade up to somewhere like this and allow Seattle to maybe pick Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson, the center, two centers in this draft that are first round caliber players? I think that's possible because they do need interior O-line. But at the same time, I think for positional value, you probably wind up taking edge here because they need some of that too.
Yep.
And then it becomes down, do you like Jared Verse or Laiatu Latu? I lean towards Latu, but I could be convinced either way.
Yeah, I think Jared Verse or Latu definitely need some pass rush. They got Boye Mafe. He had a incredible year last year. You put somebody opposite him because they lose out on Leonard Williams. His contract is up. So I think they just need a little bit more, and I think an edge will be here. So I think Jared Verse.
All right, you're going to go Verse. Latu's, if his medical, it checks out for people, he's going to go way higher than people think. All right.
Let's go with him.
Jacksonville on the clock. Or sorry, not Jacksonville. Jacksonville traded out of this pick. Vegas on the clock. And by the way, the quarterbacks are still there. We still got Nix. We still got Penix. So that is a huge, huge win for Las Vegas if it plays out like this.
Mm-hmm.
Which guy do you like for them? Because I think that's obviously the direction you go. I mean, I guess you could just keep rolling with what they got and maybe try to, in the second round, take one if they fall. Because there's not like a ton of guys that are, or a ton of teams that are looking. You get even riskier and be like, we're going to take an O-lineman here.
Yeah, I think Antonio Pierce, he really likes O'Connell.
Yeah.
Um,
He really likes is Jaden Daniels, but that's a different discussion.
Might be an unpopular opinion. I think they go O-line here, though.
Okay.
I think it gets risky. They're going to wait to get Bo Nix or Michael Penix.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you got your choice. Are you an Olu Fashanu guy, a JT Latham guy, or an Amarius Mims guy? Because they've got all of them on the board to choose from. There's some other, Tyler Guytons, et cetera, that other folks like. But I think at this stage, you're looking at those three players, and it's really a matter of personal preference and stylistic preference. I don't know that Fashanu's got the toughness that's like the Raider way.
Yeah.
I think you're looking at Latham or Mims.
I think J.C. Latham is their guy. I think he's the guy.
All right. I'm gonna go J.C. Latham then. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other at this time for the Raiders. All right, Bears are back on the clock now. Obviously, earlier we had them take Caleb Williams at 1. They need edge help as well. They're a really interesting team for Laiatu Latu because he's kind of like a moves more. I won't say finesse, but he's a different kind of player than Montez Sweat. And that's a really interesting spot for him to go. Again, this trade with Cincinnati. They could also go interior D-line here, and Johnny Newton right there down the road from Illinois goes from Champaign to Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm good with either of those. I think those would be the two guys that I would put up on the board.
It's tough.
The other wild card option is do you go Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver? Which I think is tempting, but like I'm not that tempted by that with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen already on the roster. And as deep as this receiver class is, I feel like I can get someone else later.
I'm going Laiatu Latu.
Okay. I'm fine with either of those. Let's go for it. Rams on the clock, they're psyched about that because this is an easy one. As tempting as it might be from a sexiness standpoint to be like, Penix or Nix, because they need to get the quarterback of the future for when Matthew Stafford is done.
Yep.
Aaron Donald just retired. Johnny Newton's on the board. The pick is Johnny Newton from Illinois.
Yes, sir.
Any qualms?
Nope.
No? Excellent. All right, and then let's get the Steelers pick here, and then we will take a break, and we will finish this off at the top of – sorry, I'm not supposed to say that anymore. If you've been listening to the show, you know that. Coming up at 5 o'clock. Not the top of the hour. It is the top of the hour, but nobody knows that. Top of the hour is 5 o'clock. Did you know that? The point is, the Steelers are psyched here because they need center, and you have your pick of Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton, and I would say Graham Barton is the easy selection there.
Yeah, I would also go with Graham. Do you think wide receiver could also be a possibility?
I think it could be. It could be. And Brian Thomas Jr. as a big go-get-it receiver with Russell Wilson throwing deep balls to him is very interesting, but I feel like the more Steelers pick is a guy like Barton, who, by the way, might be able to play tackle, but probably is a day one, like not even pretty, really good starting center.
Yeah.
Super versatile, and great athlete along the offensive line. Okay, Dolphins are on the clock at 21. You got the Eagles, you got the Patriots, you got the Cowboys all coming up. And, by the way, you got a couple of tackles falling that might make it kind of intriguing for Washington to trade back in. We will look at all of that as we wrap up Mock Draft 1.0 next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We are 20 picks into Mock Draft 1.0 here on the show. We're going to do a mock draft today. We're going to do a mock draft next Wednesday and the Wednesday following, which will, of course, be the day before the NFL draft. Coming up at 5:30, my pal Tom Haberstroh drops by. There was a game last night in the NBA that had 2 free throws. Not like in a quarter in the last 5 minutes, the fourth quarter. No, total. Record. Tom's been on the drop in free throws for a couple of months since all of a sudden, dramatically, free throws and scoring dropped off in the NBA after the torrid start to the season. So we'll talk to Tom about that coming up at 5:30. And then 6 o'clock, Mina Kimes from ESPN, just part of our conversation that we taped earlier today on Take Command. Right now, though, continuing with Mock Draft 1.0, last 5 picks were Graham Barton of Duke, the center to the Steelers, Johnny Newton to the Rams, defensive tackle. In a trade, Chicago was at 18. We took Laiatu Latu. J.C. Latham goes to the Raiders in a trade. That was at 17. And then Jared Verse, the edge out of Florida State, went to Seattle at 16. At 21, Miami, they need O-line. They got Fashanu and Mims to choose from. Man, that is a pretty good situation for them to be in. I could go either way. They're both moved pretty well. Mims is like an ultimate freakazoid kind of guy. Mm-hmm. But I think Fashanu was a guy that earlier in the process people were really high on, and for some reason he's fallen off. Sometimes I think those guys wind up going where the scouts originally had them. I'm going to actually lean towards Fashanu here.
You're going for Shanu. I was more so thinking Mims just because of how creative Mike McDaniels is with the offense. I don't know. I think. Do you think Mims is a little bit more mobile?
I mean, he's definitely more mobile for his size because, I mean, that dude is an unbelievable athlete. But I also think, like, Fashanu's you feel good about as a day one starter. He played for 3 years, played a bunch of snaps. Like, Mims played 7 games. Yeah. They need dudes now. I'm going to go Fashanu. I'm making a call here. Yep. Fashanu is the pick at 21. All right, the Eagles are at 22. PFF has their needs listed as wide receiver, linebacker, DB. I don't know that they need wide receivers. They have Devontae Smith and they have A.J. Brown, who, by the way, reminds some people are reminded by Brian Thomas Jr., or that Brian Thomas Jr. is like A.J. Brown. He's still somehow on the board for us, but I think the DB thing is way more intriguing for them. And I think they could go a couple of different ways here. One, they could go traditional corner, Terrion Arnold. Some people's number 1 corner is still on the board. Mm-hmm. His teammate Kool-Aid McKinstry still on the board, but you'd probably just take Arnold. The other way they could go is Cooper DeJean, who's probably more of a nickel safety type of player, but they've been trying to figure out the safety thing, and they brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to do that. What if they just let DeJean kind of roam around and do stuff? I think that's a really intriguing pick for them. But I could also just say, like, hey, let's do the safe quote-unquote thing, and go with Terrion Arnold. Good zone corner. Fits what they do.
I mean, I think I might lean more towards your theory on the safety thing with Cooper DeJean or DeJean. I do like Terrion Arnold, but they just took Kelee Ringo last year. I think you want to.
Ringo he wasn't a high pick, though.
He was a 4th rounder, but I'm just saying, like, he played towards the end of the season.
But they were terrible at corner. I would go Arnold.
Yeah.
I would just go. I think DeJean is, like, intriguing and sexy, and sometimes you get distracted. You take the guy at the position that you need that does the thing that you want them to do. I think you go Terrion Arnold. I hit the button. We're going Terrion Arnold.
All right.
New England at 23. Now, this becomes interesting because they need. What did we give them earlier? We traded back. We gave them Byron Murphy the second.
3. Yep.
So they could go Penix here or Nix. They're both still on the board. So they could go quarterback. They could go tackle and take Amarius Mims. They could take Tyler Guyton at tackle. They need playmakers. They could go Brian Thomas Jr. And that's probably, or they could go take a shot on an edge and do like a Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson bit.
I think they continue to build on their trenches, to be honest. I think they go O-line here. I think they go O-line.
The other possibility, I would say, is what if the old Washington Commanders called?
We packaged together a couple of picks.
Yeah. Where did they go? Washington Commanders. So if they go 23 for 40, which is Chicago's second, and they've already got 34. It's so funny because so many of the picks are like right next to each other. For Washington, you give up 40.
78?
No, that's too rich. 152. So it's a sixth. And if you want to make it a fifth. 40 and 139 for 23. If you're New England, do you want that extra fifth? Or do you just want to take a guy?
I think they're in need of overhauling their roster. I think they take the pick. They might ask for the fourth.
Maybe. Okay, so what if let's even make it the compensatory. Yeah. 40 and 100 for 23. That feels more fair. All right. Washington. You're back. Then the question becomes, who do they take? I would probably go Amarius Mims and hope that we can get the most out of one of the freakiest athletes that we've seen. I think you could also go Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, probably a little bit safer, but the upside's not quite as high. But Guyton is kind of a crazy athlete as well.
Yeah.
Which direction do you want to go?
I think I would lean Guyton just because I wouldn't necessarily want my rookie quarterback out there getting I mean, I'm not saying Amarius.
That's the incorrect answer. The correct answer is Amarius Mims. That dude he played he only had 7 games.
Yeah.
But there are 7 good games in the SEC.
Yeah.
Amarius Mims. So Washington comes out with Jaden Daniels and Amarius Mims. Cowboys are on the clock. They're probably bummed. They're like, dang, we thought we had him. They could go. They're an interesting spot for Brian Thomas Jr. I know they need other things. Like, I think the safer play for them is to go Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. But I could definitely make an argument for Kool-Aid McKinstry or like one of these other players that on the defensive backfield as they lost a couple of guys. But I actually think like, hey, their win now, Brian Thomas Jr., big play receiver that kind of can replace Michael Gallup.
I like tackle for Dallas. I like Guyton. You let Tyron leave.
You did. Here's my question for Guyton is, can he play left tackle? Because they need a left tackle. They've got a right tackle, don't they? Or is their right tackle meh? Is it Terrence Steele? Is he still playing right tackle for them?
Yeah, I think he is.
All right, let's just go Guyton. Sorry, Cowboys. You're going, I mean, good pick. Packers, they could use a tackle as well. They're probably kind of bummed that Guyton goes there. They could also go interior defensive line. They could also go safety. They're an interesting Cooper DeJean spot. One of the youngest rosters in the league.
Yeah. I like Cooper.
Okay.
I like Cooper here.
I don't dislike that either. All right. Tampa at 26 is next up. We'll finish out the first round next. Mock Draft 1.0 wrapping up on the Hoffman Show. wrapping up mock draft 1.0 on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We'll do mock draft 2.0 next week. It'll be a different style. Today, Anthony and I have collaborated on every single pick. Next week, I think Linnell's going to stick around on Wednesday after he gets done screaming with/at Russell. And we're each going to take control of a third of the draft. So we'll flow through it. We'll put like a 60-second clock on it, and we will get through the entire draft in 1 hour. Anthony picking for a third of the teams, me picking for a third of the teams, and Linnell picking for a third of the teams as well. Right now, we are finishing out the first. We got the Tampa Bay Bucks on the clock at 26. Got the Cardinals, Bills, Lions, Ravens, 49ers, and Chiefs still to go. I think you could see a pair of defensive ends go here. And I think you could see Chop Robinson and Darius Robinson go back-to-back. So the dream that those guys get to Washington at 40. We did, by the way, trade back into the first round and take Amarius Mims at 23 for Washington. So you get the tackle, but I think the edge is going to wind up being something different, which, by the way, is something we should talk about. We're going to do some analysis of our own draft later, and I already maybe have some regret on that front. But I would say at 26, Chop Robinson, just like
I
that
like
dude, the athleticism of that dude in the Tampa Bay Bucks jersey just feels dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. They also moved on from Shaquille Barrett, so I think him plugging him in, I think will be best suited for them for the first round anyway.
All right, so then you got, I would say Arizona's probably kind of bummed because they, Jonathan Gannon, what he did with like Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, some of those speed type of guys in Philly, I think he would love to have Chop Robinson available, but I don't think he's mad at Darius Robinson either. He's one of the best players at the Senior Bowl, kid out of Missouri. So I think he's definitely an option for them there. They could also go line. They could go Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon as well on the interior of the offensive line. He's definitely one of the better players available at this point. I also think that they are, maybe if someone wants to trade up, this is the kind of area where like Brian Thomas Jr. is becoming a steal. I can't believe we haven't taken him yet. But I would say either Jackson Powers Johnson or Darius Robinson is who I would offer up here.
I think Darius Robinson is the way to go here.
All right, so the edge out of Missouri. Then, Brian, this is easy. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU.
Yep.
He goes to the Bills. The Bills are like, they're pretending it's the middle of winter. They're running around with their shirts off, drunk, jumping through tables. Because they get him, Thomas Jr., to replace Gabe Davis, which is a better Gabe Davis. They are psyched. The Lions are interesting because they are the kind of team that feels like they can always take another offensive lineman and kind of do. So when you talk about best available here, you're talking about Jackson Powers Johnson. You're talking about obviously the quarterbacks, which they're probably not that interested in. Although, I don't know, do they take a flyer on a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix? I think if those guys were younger, you'd think about it. But because they're older, you're not going to wait for them to sit behind Goff for 3 years. So if you want some kind of project quarterback, maybe, but that feels like a reach. There's not like a good fit for that. I do think they could go.
What about safety?
There's not really a safety. I mean, I guess Nubin out of Minnesota, but there's not really a safety that's like a first-round safety this year.
Yeah.
I think some of the guys that are considered first-round players still are like Jordan Morgan, but he could be a guard. You could take him and maybe justify that. I also just wonder if, like, do they just go receiver too? And do they look at, like, Ladd McConkey out of Georgia and be like, we put him in the slot. Give Goff another dude who just is open all the time. Replace Reynolds. Like, that could work for them.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tempted to do that.
I mean, so where are you going to line up Amon Ra?
He can play outside.
Okay.
And has played quite a bit outside.
I think that makes sense then. Like, especially if
or do you want to give them like a
Reynolds.
speed receiver? Then you go, the kid out of the kid out of Texas who set the combine record. But
So you're gonna have 2 speedsters and Jameson Williams in him?
But that's the thing is you
I
don't
like
need
Ladd
that.
then.
I
I
think
like Ladd.
I think Ladd's the guy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go Ladd McConkey because like that's the thing. The Lions have built their roster to a point that they can do that kind of thing. They can have a luxury pick. All right, Ravens. They could use a receiver because they can always use a receiver. They also need big time O-line help. I think I would probably go towards the O-line. So we're looking at Jordan Morgan or Kingsley Suamatia, tackles out of Arizona and BYU.
You don't like cornerback?
I like the tackles on the board better than I think I like the cornerbacks. I don't know. I could be talking to Kool-Aid McKinstry.
I like Kool-Aid to the Ravens. They lose Ron Darby. Last year, the secondary just – I mean, they struggled a little bit as people got hurt anyway. So I think cornerback, I think, is a place that they need to address because Mollett, Darby – you need some studs out there, and I think
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll take Kool-Aid McKinstry. Okay, the 49ers could use O-line and corner. They're probably bummed that McKinstry just went off the board. They could go TJ Tampa. They could go Kamari Lassiter. They could go Mike Sainristil if they want a nickel. I mean, this is, again, it's the 49ers. They're loaded. Do you just go, does one of these receivers have something for you that you think can ultimately replace Deebo Samuel? A lot of people think they could wind up trading Deebo in this offseason. Is there a guy like that? Do you reach on another edge?
I mean,
I don't know what you do.
What's his name? Xavier Leggett?
Leggett out of South Carolina?
He runs like Deebo. He's built like Deebo. If you're thinking of moving off of him, I think he's the replacement kind of guy.
It feels a little rich for him, but not by as much as you'd think.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider here is there a team like Las Vegas or New England that wants to trade up and it'd be minuscule to trade back up here and get the 5th-year option on a quarterback? So let's play that game. Let's say Las Vegas, who's sitting at 44, wants to give you 44 and 112 for 31. Or something like that. I don't have the draft charts in front of me. Now, the Raiders don't have a ton of picks, but do they want a 5th-year option on a quarterback? And this is where I think these quarterbacks being older is a wacky bit. Is like, how much does that 5th-year option mean to you when that quarterback's going to be 29 at that 5th-year option? Yeah. Let's just stay put. Who do you want? Who do we take for the Niners? I'd say let's go Jordan Morgan, tackle out, because I think he might wind up playing guard too. So whether he is a right tackle for them, whether he winds up playing guard for them, whether he's Trent's eventual replacement at left tackle, I think there's some potential. Like, he's a very moldable piece, I think, potentially. I'm going to go Jordan Morgan. And then which receiver do you want for the Chiefs?
Xavier Worthy.
Okay. He's very, very fast. Xavier Worthy, you run a 4-2, you get to go in the first round. And that is our mock draft. Quickest of recaps. Williams to the Bears, Daniels to the Commanders, McCarthy to the Vikings, Harrison to the Cardinals, May to the Broncos, Neighbors to the Giants, Alt to the Titans, Turner to the Falcons, Adunze to the Bengals in a trade, Brock Bowers to the Jets, Byron Murphy to the Patriots after their trade down at 11, Fuaga to the Chargers, Kenyon Mitchell to the Jags at 13 with the trade, Troy Fontenot to the Saints, Nate Wiggins to the Colts, Jared Verse to the Seahawks. Then back half of the first round, Latham to the Raiders, Laiatu Latu to the Bears, Johnny Newton to the Rams, Barton to the Steelers, Fashanu to the Dolphins, Terry and Arnold to the Eagles. Washington trades back up into the first round for Amarius Mims. Tyler Guyton then goes to the Cowboys. Cooper DeJean to the Packers. Chop Robinson to the Bucks. Darius Robinson to the Cardinals. Brian Thomas Jr. to the Bills. Ladd McConkey to the Detroit Lions. McKinstry to the Ravens. Jordan Morgan to the Niners. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. What I think is fun about mock drafts, though, the most fun, is you learn stuff from them. A little bit later in the show, Anthony and I will reflect on this mock draft and tell you what we learned from going through the exercise. Next, though, we learn from my pal Tom Haberstroh, NBA insider, NBA analyst extraordinaire, who has been on the fact that free throws are down significantly in the NBA. Why? What's happening that ultimately led to the Bucks and Celtics having 2 total free throws and the Celtics not taking any last night? Haberstroh next. the Hoffman Show. We're live on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Really fantastic chat earlier today with Mina Kimes from ESPN. You'll hear some of that coming up at the 6 o'clock. And then after we let you hear a little bit from our chat with Mina, Anthony and I will reflect on our mock draft as well as talk about something that we talked about with Mina, which is it worth doing what Ant and I did to trade back into the first round for the Commanders? And if so, who do you do it for? Because I already have a bit of a second guess on what we did in the mock draft 30 minutes ago, which is fun. We traded back up for Amarius Mims. I don't have regrets about that, but as you look ahead later and how things fall, did we actually trade back up for the wrong position? That would be the question I have, and we'll explore that thought coming up in the 6 p.m. hour. Right now, though, it is time to welcome in an old friend, talk a little NBA for today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Great old friend of the show, my guy Tom Haberstroh, NBA analyst. God, old habits die hard. I almost said ESPN NBA analyst, Tom. Like, that's how many times we used to talk back in the day. But Tom's doing great work now independently on his Substack page, including a piece that has definitely caught my attention and I've kind of been thinking about, and really came to the forefront last night in this Bucks-Celtics game where there are 2 free throw attempts in the game in total. 0 by the Celtics, first time in NBA history. And Tom, you wrote at TomTheFinder.com about how the NBA is going, like, wow, this scoring surge here that we're seeing is kind of nuts. Maybe we need to talk to the officials and change some things to bring it back into the realm. And here we are last night, maybe to a bit of an extreme. So first of all, welcome back to the show. Great to see you.
Great to be on, Craig, and appreciate the shout out. And we're OGs in this NBA beat. And I remember you almost probably said Heat Index. You were like, Tom Haberstroh from ESPN's Heat Index. Back in the day when I was covering LeBron every day, it was that was when I kind of broke into this thing and we met. So it feels like yesterday. But now at the Finder, I did that post, which was really, I was watching NBA games and noticing that the games were no longer in like the 130s, the 140s and 150s that we were seeing in November and December. And Luka had 73 points and Joel Embiid had 70 in the same week. And then all of a sudden, like, you didn't hear about that anymore, Craig. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, the scoring in the NBA. And the reason was, and I had figured it out, is that shooting fouls and whistles were way down and the scores were in the 90s and the 80s and in some cases the 70s. And I was looking around, Craig, and I was like, what? Is it anyone not realizing that mid-season the NBA scoring environment has just collapsed? And so what I did was I looked into the numbers and I noticed that
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
this just in.
Not My Beat.
Great old friend of the show, my guy Tom Haberstroh, NBA analyst. God, old habits die hard. I almost said ESPN NBA analyst, Tom. Like, that's how many times we used to talk back in the day. But Tom's doing great work now independently on his Substack page, including a piece that has definitely caught my attention and I've kind of been thinking about, and really came to the forefront last night in this Bucks-Celtics game where there are 2 free throw attempts in the game in total. 0 by the Celtics, first time in NBA history. And Tom, you wrote at TomTheFinder.com about how the NBA is going, like, wow, this scoring surge here that we're seeing is kind of nuts. Maybe we need to talk to the officials and change some things to bring it back into the realm. And here we are last night, maybe to a bit of an extreme. So first of all, welcome back to the show. Great to see you.
Great to be on, Craig, and appreciate the shout out. And we're OGs in this NBA beat. And I remember you almost probably said Heat Index. You were like, Tom Haberstroh from ESPN's Heat Index. Back in the day when I was covering LeBron every day, it was that was when I kind of broke into this thing and we met. So
Yeah.
it feels like yesterday. But yeah, now at the Finder, I did that post, which was really, I was watching NBA games and noticing that the games were no longer in like the 130s, the 140s and 150s that we were seeing in November and December. And Luka had 73 points and Joel
Right.
Embiid had 70 in the same week. And then all of a sudden, like, you didn't hear about that more, Craig. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, the scoring in the NBA. And the reason was, and I had figured it out, is that shooting fouls and whistles were way down, and the scores were in the 90s and the 80s, and in some cases the 70s. And I was looking around, Craig, and I was like, what? Realizing that mid-season NBA scoring environment has just collapsed. And so what I did was I looked into the numbers and I noticed that free throw attempts were way down 15, 20%. And usually you see that going up as the season goes on, or scoring goes up as the season goes on for a variety of reasons. But the trend was going in the opposite direction. And when I talked to teams and when I talked to coaches about it, they're like, whoa, we thought something was weird and something was different. And a lot of the plays that used to get a defensive foul were now sometimes a no call or going the other way, where the Trae Youngs, Luka Doncic's were going into the defender, kind of out of their way into the defender and throwing the ball up in the air. Those bang, bang plays were now being no calls, which wasn't happening earlier in the season. And it has this very large effect on scoring. And Craig, now that we're in like this gambling era, it had a huge impact on Vegas or lines too, is that the under hitting on the totals over under like 70%. And so and it was one of those things that you write about hoping you didn't miss something, and it seemed to catch fire, and it was a big story, and then the league had to talk to the owners about it. But it was pretty wild. And now you're seeing like this would never have happened, I don't think, in November and December. And for this switch to happen mid-season is kind of crazy.
No, it's super wild. And I think there's kind of multiple discussions to have off of this, right? There's kind of the, hey, and like, why did this change happen? There's kind of the micro story. And then I think there's a fun, like, for two guys that love basketball, macro discussion of like whether this is good or bad for the game. Let's start off with like fleshing out the micro part of it. Like, was there a league memo? Was there like an officiating something? Was there a kind of point of inflection where something happened that or did it just happen over a very short amount of time?
Yeah, the NBA didn't that there was any sort of decree sent out to the officials to change the way that they're officiating the game. And I get that. Like, they're smart, and it would make if there was some sort of documentation that the NBA was changing the rules on the fly, you would have heard. And the weird thing is about the NBA is that they do run the officials. Like, the officials work for the NBA. They get their pay. NBA. And so they have this thing called points of emphasis, where the boss of the leader of the NBA officiating reminds officials, and through these press releases and through these memos to teams, like re-emphasizing important things that they're looking out for. And so they do have these kind of updates, monthly updates that they send out to teams and to the reporters. However, what was happening was an extreme version of that. Like, there wasn't any sort of, in those memos, the points of emphasis memos to the teams, like, hey, we're going to cut down on these calls by 40%. Like, we need to rein in on these things like significantly. It was just kind of like, hey, remember, this is a foul, this is not a foul, those sort of things. Pretty boring stuff. Now, this all came to a head, and there was a competition committee meeting in which this was addressed. And the NBA mentioned that there was an officiating focus. Whatever you want to read into, it's semantics, right?
Yeah.
Whether there was a decree or an officiating focus.
I wish I could be that focused at anything I do in my entire life.
Right. It was an officiating focus that they were trying to make sure that they were, quote unquote, consistent. And there was an ESPN podcast on the Low Post where Joe Dumars, who's the executive director of basketball operations for the NBA, the kind of rules czar, the punishment czar, clearly just that he is the guy who, when guys get suspended or fined, like he's the one who sends that out or decides that. And they also had Monty McCutcheon on there, who's the head of refereeing for the NBA, and they dispelled the notion that there was any sort of decree or that they put down and said, hey, we need to lower scoring. They deny that. But you can't, like they said on the pod, you can't argue with the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. And the facts are that in October and November and December, there were 46 free throws per game. In January, 46 free throws per game. Then in February, right around the time Doncic had 73 and Joel Embiid had 70, the bottom fell out. And in the month of February, the free throws went down to 40, which is it might not sound like a lot, but that, like, in the grand scheme of things, that is a significant change. And I actually asked a statistician about this, like, statistically significant that something happened. It wasn't just random variation. And then in March, it went 39 free throws per game. And right now in April, it's about 40. So there was like a crazy Luka Doncic game like a few nights ago where there was, a crazy amount of free throws. But then last night there was 2. Right. And Craig, to just like further emphasize this point, there had never been a game in NBA history where there were fewer than 11. There was 2 last night, okay, in that Bucks-Celtics game, which was on national TV. And I'm going to run through the numbers here with you.
Okay.
In game 1 between these two teams, Milwaukee and Boston this year, there was 34 free throws. In game 2, there was 46. And then game 3 back in March, there was 43. Last night, there were 2. So it went from 34 to 43 to 2. Like,
I'm not a statistician that feels statistically significant to me.
Yeah. I mean, my 7-year-old would say the same thing, right? So like this is something's happening. And usually like when you talk to GMs and stuff, they say usually stuff happens in the off season, but it's happening in the mid season. And maybe they're just introducing playoff style basketball like a month already. But again, Craig, this didn't happen in years past. This is new.
Right. By the way, speaking of us being OGs, your kid's 7? When your kid was born.
Yeah.
That's old friend is with us here on the hot. If you want to read all of this data and read more about it, is tomthefinder.com. It's his Substack. You definitely should check it out. So that kind of leads Tom to like the bigger question of what does this mean for the actual game and for the NBA product. I think those games that were in the 150, it could be fun. Was a thing if teams are going up and down, pace of play is higher, and there's a lot of factors there, and that can be really fun if it truly is up and down basket. If it's just a constant parade to the free throw, nobody wants to watch that. And I do think, and as a basketball fan, like someone who plays pickup basketball, like
free throws and pickup basketball,
the swing
by the way,
and like all the stuff that like the manipulating the free throws is crap, and I hated it. I was glad when like they eliminated the Durant play, and some of these are like shot to a guy. And you're right. Like when you play pickup, you don't get rewarded for it. Like all you do is you have the ball, so you might as well just keep playing. Like basketball in the sense of the sport game manipulation of the rules to your advantage, which like the point is to win. So congrats to you. But you think that in general, I think about this a lot with some of the NFL rule changes too. The point of the rules is to create the spirit of the game in a way that you don't create false rewards. It's you reward people fake problem, and you cut off the cobra that you bring is what actually you're incentivizing people to do is farm cobras off their heads, which doesn't eliminate the cobra.
I haven't heard that one before. That's great.
Freakonomics authors, at least where I read there. But like the incentive structure. And so I like incentivizing going to the free throw line. The free throw line should when a defender messes up, not when an offense bombards into someone. That's my like take on this. However,
so there's a couple things here. The NBA was in that memo just officiating laws. They had mentioned that also there's a decrease in space, a decline in pace.
Okay.
So this is really interesting. The NBA was arguing that the NBA scoring was down, yes, because of fewer foul calls being made, but there's also this thing called pace going down, and therefore scoring totals, right? The problem is because free throws were down, pace was down. The causality is in the other direction, is that think it'll happen on a scoring play, it artificially cuts that possession down. It shortens the possession. If you don't call foul, the play goes on, and then you have fewer possessions in an overall game. So if your foul is correct, you have a lower pace of play because the possessions are lasting longer. So it became like I was thinking about this. I was like, maybe I missed that. Maybe it is pace is actually just slowing down. This isn't about the foul calls. And then it was the foul calls were increase in pace, or the fewer foul calls were decreasing the pace. So this was one of those cases where I just feel like that, like, I don't know what exactly happened. We'll probably never find out what form it took. But the idea that this was just a random variation, we already know that that's not possible. The idea that there was maybe a soft directive, like their entire officiating crews things, or to message certain things and have a place where the boss says something and you kind of know what they're getting at without the boss actually putting it in writing.
Right.
And so there's that.
Or even just like the way they're reviewed, right? If you're like, you get going to call it differently the next time. It's an almost instant fix.
Yeah, and L2Ms, like the last 2-minute reports, like you can get feedback on those things too. So there's also that. The other piece of it is 3-point shooting, and I want to mention last night is that they took 52 threes. And we know that that 3-pointers are less likely to be fouled on than a drive at the rim. So there is part of this a shot selection thing, but still, like, the teams played 3 other times this year and they had free throw totals in the 30s and 40s, and yet we have 2. And in the last month, there have been a few games where there's 3 free throws, 4 free throws in a game. Just it's an anomaly. And so I think fan-wise, I love it. Another thing, this era in basketball is actually the lowest number of free throws per possession in NBA. It's somewhere in the lower third of NBA history. So in general, we're having fewer free throws in today's game. Problem is now TV is so important, and the dollars and the negotiations with the media deals. I wrote about this, that it's kind of a soft pitch clock. I wrote about it on Tom the Finder, where the games are shorter now because they're not standing at the 3-point line. And I had a game last night where it was on Sunday, Celtics Blazers, 35 minutes. Ooh. And it was a dream that might be playing a part of it, whether it's kind of results rather than the process. That the games are shorter, and I think it's a better viewing experience, just like in baseball, where if they're not just standing around, there's more action.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Do you think that there's been, we'll wrap up here with Tom Haberstroh, of course, here on the Hoffman Show, spot, or is there like a sweet spot middle that you think is actually the right spot? Like, have they overcorrected here, or is this where it should be?
Yeah, well, you're seeing altercations, you're seeing physicality being, rewarded, and you just worry that games get out of hand. And so I think there is a happy medium between what we're seeing now and what I think should happen. The messaging here, if you're going to change the rules, you got to let the teams and players know inside information that you could have and go monetize that to local sports book and betting on the unders, that's another piece of the story that I think people need to pay attention to is like, yeah, I mean, should they have communicated it to teams? Maybe, but there's also the kind of inside information. If someone knows that the games are going to be called differently and that's not public information, you can act upon that in ways that is scary. So, but do I think the NBA is controlled? It depends on what your definition of controlling is. The referees are being paid by the NBA, and they have points of emphasis and on games. And we're seeing that with the official totals is that it's much different now earlier.
There's definitely just nature. Read him. Tom contributing at Yahoo. So and show because it's playoff time. The NFL draft is finally going to clear off. It's gonna be time to have you back. Go on.
On the foot, I do have a take that we should ban kickers.
Oh wow! Now that if we have like a list of like when we get real in radio world here.
Gotta find me.
Ban kickers. Yeah. That went down.
Yeah.
Tom Haberstroh.
Thanks, Craig.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Earlier today, had the chance to catch up with Mina Kimes, ESPN NFL analyst, freshly Emmy nominated for her work on NFL Live. Also, her podcast, The Mina Kimes Show, featuring Lenny, is fantastic. Lenny's her dog. Lenny doesn't really actually make that many appearances on the microphones. I don't watch it on YouTube, so maybe he is on camera all the time. Anyway, the point is, Mina's great. Mina doesn't need the extra introduction. She was really generous with her time. We chatted for about 30 minutes, me, her, and Logan, and we got into some of the big inflection points of the draft. We also, of course, talked about the Commanders at 2 and the way she sees the quarterbacks. For that, you're going to have to check out Take Command tomorrow morning when it goes live in the podcast feed. But special gift for you right now, the radio listening audience, part 2, actually, of our chat with Mina Kimes, looking at the back half of the first round of the upcoming NFL draft. One of my favorite moments that happens in all 4 of your mocks, Mina, with your guests in the war room is you offer them Brock Bowers at 10. They really want to take him, and then they go offensive line. If you have that choice, pick your offensive lineman versus Brock Bowers. Would you take Brock Bowers, or would you go with them?
This is why I feel like the worm exercise is really useful, because this is, I guarantee you, so many GMs will have to be physically restrained from drafting Brock Bowers, blah. Like, or coaches rather, are going to be like, offensive coordinators going to be like, give me. And GMs,
or Aaron Rodgers crashing the draft room.
Well, that's the first inflection point for Bowers, right? Is pick 10 with, and that's an interesting one, because they're such a unique team, because their timeline is they so obviously win now. But the thing is, offensive tackle for them, you could argue, is both a win now and a win long-term move for the Jets, because of the the age of the offensive tackles that they brought in, Smith and Moses. And yeah, it's tricky. So like we just talked about this on the latest episode of my podcast, the value thing with Bowers. So you guys know this, but obviously, just for listeners, obviously one of the biggest benefits of getting a guy on a rookie contract is the money savings. Pick 10, you're making about $5 million a year, right? Which is an incredible savings if you get a top wide receiver like a Garrett Wilson in New York, for example, because they make in the 20 millions. Whereas if you get an amazing tight end at that position, you're not actually saving that much money. So the bar for that tight end is higher. And Logan, I mean, you agree with this facts. That said, Brock Bowers might be that tight end, because he's as good of a prospect at the position that I don't know. How does he compare to Pitts for you?
So for me, I think Pitts was a really unique evaluation, because I felt like his length and his size allowed him to compete in line in a way that I'd never seen a tight end do before. Like, he could be your true X receiver. He could beat a number 1 corner and then he could block a 6 technique, and he could pass pro. And I think like that diversity made me so confident in his evaluation that he was going to be good, because you couldn't screw it up. Right. And then Atlanta screwed it up because they just played him at X the whole time. And it was like all this flexibility that he gives your offense is there. Brock Bowers is unique to me because his yards after the catch ability is tremendous. Like, the way he runs routes is very Travis Kelce-esque in terms of how he feels zone. Awesome. He competes in line, but he can't win consistently versus big defensive linemen. So you need to have conceptually, as an offensive coordinator, a vision and an identity for how to maximize that. I just said, screw it. I'm just going to evaluate him like a receiver. And if you evaluate him like a receiver, like he's the 4th guy for me, right? Like he's like him and Brian Thomas Jr. are kind of neck and neck. And so in this offense here, in the Jets, who need to win right now, Aaron Rodgers, like, I want playmakers, I want weapons. And I think Elijah Vera Tucker on the inside gives you a lot of flexibility to say, hey, man, if one of these tackles get hurt, so we can add some interior depth there. A guy like, Christian Haynes from UConn, he can plug in at guard. We can move Vera Tucker to tackle. And I just don't think in this class specifically, there's an offensive playmaker like this that works the middle of the field the way he does. And I just think about Aaron Rodgers throwing to like Jermichael Finley back in the day in Green Bay, and how he was able to maximize that group. And that you mentioned that has a crazy timetable, like, let's score a ton of points and let's let our quarterback deal, is what I'm thinking here. So
yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I like what you said about you have him almost as the 4th wide receiver, because I do like, if you're just ranking weapons, he would be 4 for me as well. He's of Thomas Jr. He does more things for offense than Thomas Jr. I see him actually. Yeah. If I was an offensive coordinator, I would rather have Brock Bowers because of what that you can do with, formations and personnel groupings and whatnot. So when you think about it from that point of view, it makes a lot of sense. The team that I actually keep for is Indianapolis at 15. No, laughing?
No, that's
like
a very popular one, because like it fits like with what they. But it's just funny because they go out every year and they get a crazy traitsy tight end, and then they're just this like the third year in a row they're gonna have a really crazy traitsy tight end who's good at football. So,
but who's actually, like more polished though.
But I also feel like in that offense, the thing that inhibits you in Indy, we're getting a lot of fun agent here, is that they have no vertical speed in that offense, really, right?
You don't think Alec Pierce?
Alec Pierce runs a 4, but I think his ability to consistently catch the football inhibits the effectiveness of that threat, right? So,
look at the people who've been throwing him deep balls.
No. And again, like I like him as a prospect, I like him as a player, but I think if you could get a more productive vertical element to your passing game, I think that magnifies what Pittman does.
That's your Brian Thomas Jr. spot then.
Yeah, so for me, that's kind of the way I would look at that. If there's this vertical pass catcher there, speed is fine. Be fast. Let's open this up, especially if we got a quarterback who's running the ball the way that Anthony Richards is going to run it. Why not? You know what I mean? So
yeah, and you got down. I totally forgot about Downs too, who actually was pretty good for them year one.
Yeah,
and has good hands, and he's more of your slot guy. So you have somebody work underneath. You have McApin working that 10 to 20 yard range, and then if you throw in, that is actually a nice group. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would like either of those picks. My preference is for them to go offense, though, because I keep seeing corners mock to them. They obviously need a corner. But like, I feel like we talk all about, oh my God, Bryce Young needs help. Well, what about Anthony Richardson, man? Like, they need an eval, like a real eval on him year 2. And my feeling is they still need to add to that group of skill players.
All right, a couple more inflection points / questions here. 11, currently Minnesota. Everyone thinks they're going to trade up, but currently 11, 12, 13, Denver, Las Vegas. All teams targeting quarterbacks, all trying to trade up. Which of those 3 teams is least likely to come out of this draft with a quarterback in the first round? They're all going to take one somewhere, but like they don't take Penix, McCarthy, or they don't trade up to get one of the top guys.
I think the Raiders. I think
least likely.
Yeah, least likely. Yeah, I think it's more likely that the Raiders sit, wait, take Penix later, and the Broncos. I feel there's like Peyton. I think probably has more influence on the draft process than I'm guessing Antonio Pierce does, and I can't imagine he'll go into this season without another option at quarterback. Maybe,
but he's done that before though, right? He's gone into a year starting Jared Stidham, right? Like that happened. Am I imagining that? Like,
I think that's you telling the future.
Yeah,
no, I'm just like,
well, you mean with States? You mean like
yes.
Breeze was injured, or
yeah.
mean, or even before. Yeah, I think if he really likes Stidham, maybe they'd be more comfortable with it.
Seems crazy though.
I don't know, but man, I to me though, I think more likely than not, both of those teams wait till later rounds. I mean, the track record of quarterbacks drafted after 15 is just not good, or after even 10 is not good. So,
I got a question for you on Penix. Like, what's your read on him? Because I know like Sims you had on your podcast is very, very high on him. He's always high on like traitsy types of players, and he fits that bill. Like, is he a value? Like, is he a first round player in your evaluation, or do you think he's going to be there in the second round when some of these teams need quarterbacks?
I think he'll be there in the second round. I do. I think we in our community probably undervalue how much teams care about age and injury history. Honestly, it's really. I mean, that is. I was just talking to my friend Bonnie Jones, and he said the Carfax is not great. So true. It really is. Like, oh my God, when you just take a step back and look at the injuries, they are really something. And people keep saying, well, if he wasn't injured, he wasn't 24. I'm like, well, he is. Like, so by the way, Bo Nix is old too. And I'm a UW fan, so I've loved watching Michael Penix Jr. I think he's so inspiring as a human. His arm talent is awesome, but he's not a perfect prospect. Like, it's not just the age and the injury history. There are a lot of games where he would kind of spray it. Some of his mechanics are a little odd to me. Didn't throw a ton over the middle of the field, and pressure mitigation. Like, he doesn't move that great. There are games where you saw better versions of that though. And I do think in the right situation, he could be a productive starter. I think that situation, has to be pretty specific. So I think there's like I view him as like very context dependent, and I think there's a lot of teams where it probably wouldn't work.
All right, last thing for you, Mina, on the way out here. Logan and I, when we've done our mocks so far, we've kind of tried to make it so, okay, we'll let the computer sim some stuff, and we can pick at 36 and 40 for Washington, because those are two obviously huge picks as well.
Okay.
So is there a player? I'm not going to make you stretch
No,
past first round knowledge.
This is a good question. There we go. Yeah.
So I'm not going to make you stretch in a second round, but as you've done these mock drafts, whether it's the War Room or any other mock draft that you've done, obviously you've been talking about all your colleagues on ESPN's, their mocks, etc. Is there a guy that has fallen into the late first round that you think for Washington at tackle? I'm going to say tackle, corner, receiver would be worth trading up for.
I know. I'm looking at the Washington depth chart right now. I think tackle is probably the position where you're most likely to get an alignment of value and need there. I think like Mims is a fascinating one because he could go in the top 10 and he could fall to the 20s. I think if he falls to the 20s, I would run. Out of Georgia.
I think we all would. We'd all probably not as fast as him, but we try to get there.
Yeah,
that big fella can move. So that is one that I really love there. Corner is interesting actually, because when I'm doing these drafts, actually I'm seeing the corners fall. Arnold and Mitchell keep going pretty in the top. Have pretty consistently been going in the top 20 or so, but Wiggins and DeJean have fallen in some of my mocks. Very, very different corners, by the way. And now that I think about it, I'm trying to think of like who would be a better fit for Quinn and his defense, assuming that there's going to be some. God, I feel like with Forbes, you can't draft Wiggins. You can't draft another skinny guy.
But do you think DeJean can play outside? Like, I mean, that's a question that I keep coming back to when I watch the film.
Yeah,
it's like,
I know.
He's a heck of a ball player. Like, he's a good football player. As a nickel safety, that guy, like kind of your honey badger guy. But, like, we got a bunch of guys like that. We need, like, an outside
They just drafted
corner.
Quan Martin.
know.
They
You
had signed
actually-
Jeremy Chin.
I forgot. Yeah, right. You had a Luvu and Chin, and you got all these So in some ways, his skill set is a little bit redundant for you. You really need an outside corner. I like Wiggins more than McKinstry, and I guess Rake Straw's being mocked there. So that would be my pick. But I think the size thing, I don't know if I'm Washington, if I'm a little scared off of that, given Forbes. I like Forbes too as a prospect. It surprised me where they picked him. Hopefully he's better in year 2, but I have to think that the size thing might scare them off of Wiggins.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask is, like, do you think, like, what do you think it would take? And this is totally, like, I know out of left field, but like going from 36 and 40, because I feel like you got to get above like 21 maybe for like a tackle. Because I think you get in that kind of meat of that round there where it's like Pittsburgh, Miami, I forget the other teams. There's like 4 or 5 teams there where you're like, you could all reasonably pick an offensive lineman. Is that a reasonable expectation, or you just hope that someone kind of slips past that tackle valley there?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of it is going to be if things start shaking out, let's say the Jets go tackle instead of, taking Bowers or whatnot, and then all of a sudden you start seeing these tackles come off the board. I do think it has to be something that Washington is open to, because, and again, like, I guess I said this at the very top, like we keep talking about the Patriots and how bad that situation is. Look, Washington's situation is not as bad because you have the receivers, but the offensive line is not great. And you're bringing in a rookie quarterback. So I would prioritize that position. Like, you have to come out of this draft upgrading at that. And if it, to your point, takes a move because of the way the board is shaking out, I think it's worth it. Especially since you don't have to, unlike everyone else, you don't have to move for quarterback.
Right. You got 6 in the top 100. Let's make it 5, but you can wind up with the first round left tackle of the future. Sounds good to me. That's math I could do. And if anyone is a regular listener to the show, math I could do is a very small amount. Very, very small amount. Mina Kimes, watch her on NFL Live, the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny. Mina, again, congrats on the Emmy nomination. That is fantastic. Very well deserved. And thanks for joining us here on Take Command.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, if anyone is listening to this who's a Commanders fan, guessing that's 99.9% of listeners. If you're not,
you never know. Who knows who you might bring to our pod.
Well, yes. check out our show. We're on YouTube at Mina Kimes. A lot of Commanders talk right now. It's so funny. I just did Bill Simmons' show, and he kept talking about like Drake May or Daniels to the Patriots, and I was like, Bill, you realize that's not your choice.
Free Bill.
It's the Commanders' choice. So y'all you're in the catbird seat. It's a very exciting time to be a Commanders fan. I'd be pumped.
Indeed. It's going to be a fun couple weeks. Mina, thanks again for coming on. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. All right, that was Mina Kimes on Take Command. It was just half the conversation, and you didn't get to hear her thoughts on quarterback for that. Subscribe to Take Command right now. I keep doing this. Every time we talk about Take Command, I feel like I announce someone else.
Uh-oh.
I announce a new guest.
You have another big guest?
Hashtag another one.
Another one.
Another one. I'll tell you who it is next on the Hoffman Show. Oh, got it with the fake out! Coming up at 6:30, we will react to Mock Draft 1.0, and I did that over the first half of the show. If you missed it, it's definitely worth the podcast for you. And I know that was a lot to chop up. Are you? Is that up yet, or is that going to be up in short time?
Everything is up.
Wow, this man is a editing machine.
I be trying.
I've been doing a lot of video editing over here as we played some of the stuff that, we were playing Mina that was on tape. et cetera. And I have not been able to get the mock draft done yet, but I will put up the video version tonight. I am kind of bummed. Our plan was to have like a video where people could watch the draft on the screen, and for some stupid reason, the screen capture is not working on my software today. So I'll work with engineering and see if we can get that for next week when Linnell is here. But that is something we're definitely going to try to do so you guys can see the board. But yeah, mock draft 1.0 is done and dusted. We will tell you what we learned from doing it and why I already have a regret about a decision we made for Washington, but not at quarterback, coming up at 6:30. But I promised a great reveal. And actually, Ant, I'm going to do you one better. I got 2 reveals.
Uh-oh.
Hey, yo. Our next guest, we already announced this on Take Command, and this is the one after Mina Kimes tomorrow. Early next week podcast will be Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Dane published today The Beast, a 400-page draft guide that I'm going to spend way too much time diving into over the next couple of days. Dane and Logan and I will talk on Friday. That podcast will come out Monday. Sometime Monday or Tuesday, we're going to talk to our friend that we made at the Super Bowl, Mike Golick Jr. Gojo, of course, played offensive line at Notre Dame. This is a crazy offensive line class. I'm going to do as much as I can of sitting back and letting Golick and Logan be big, giant O-line nerds. And so we will have Mike Golick Jr. early in the week next week. Late in the week next week, which might actually wind up airing. All these might wind up airing later. So, like, Brugler Friday airs Monday. Golick Tuesday airs Thursday, let's say, which means we start draft week. I don't know when we're going to actually record this. I'm just going to stop saying the recording times. Start of draft week. Charles Davis, NFL Network. Yeah. Charles was fantastic when he joined us here on the show. He's going to do a full podcast with me and Logan to kick off NFL Draft Week. And then Logan and I will wrap up our pre-draft coverage with our final mock draft. We'll do a full one-round mock. It'll be really fun. It'll be a great time. That is, as far as I can tell, Ant, the plan. That's what we're going to do.
That's incredible.
Pretty good.
That's some good draft coverage.
I would say that you should obviously subscribe to Take Command if you somehow have not already, whether you're a YouTube podcast consumer at the Team 980 or in your favorite podcast app. Go ahead and subscribe. You're going to want to be there. You don't want to miss an episode, but we will play some chunks, obviously, for you here on the radio show as well. When we get back, though, Ant and I react to that. Ant, that's the first mock draft you've done this draft season, yeah?
Yeah, it was.
Learned some things?
I did.
All right, we'll see what Ant learned, and I'll tell you what I learned from this one next on the Hoffman Show. The Hoffman Show. We are live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. If you missed the start of the show, really wanted to be in the first half of the show today, you missed our first mock draft 1.0. And I will say, Ant, I feel very silly because I definitely forgot to save the results. We could easily go through and recreate. Oh, you have the whole thing?
Yes, sir.
Oh, what a hero. How do you have it? Do you have it just like written down?
Yep.
Can you send that to me?
Oh, I can just copy and paste it.
Because that way I can make a graphic if I really want to get fancy with our edit of this online. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is we have it to reference. But I would ask you simply, like, the reason you do mock drafts, one, they're fun, and, I guess it's a great way. We didn't think it would take half the show, and in part we didn't. When we planned this, we didn't know that there would be Masters updates at the top and bottom of the hour, which obviously those take some time away from the actual time that we can talk, because the hours don't grow just because we have extra stuff that's great information from my guy, Ted Emmerich. Who, by the way, I'm not just saying that. I worked with Ted Emmerich in Dallas, which is fun whenever I get to hear Ted's voice on Westwood One, especially this time of year with the Masters updates. But that wound up pushing us into basically an hour and a half of a mock draft because our radio time was short. Point is, but I think, so on top of it's good content, I think the point is you learn from stuff because you realize how many different ways the draft can go and the different situations that might come up and the situations teams are going to find themselves in. And I think it's really, really instructive because it's one thing if you're at 2 and you know who the number 1 player is, and we've spent months and months and months on end going like, okay, Caleb Williams isn't available. Who do you want it to for quarterback? And that's kind of the Commanders situation. But if you have any other pick, you are so dependent on what happens in front of you. And if you're the Rams at 19, like there's 3 or 4 players that you're targeting, and I think you learn pretty quick, like, I think one of them is going to get to us, whether it's Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle out of Illinois, who we wound up taking for the Rams at 19. Is there a chance that Brock Bowers falls all the way to them at 19? They could have taken either one of the like we wound up only having the 4 quarterbacks go. Penix and Nix were still available in the second round, which is something that could happen, or it's something that is completely implausible, and all 6 quarterbacks will go in the top 13. So I think you learn how quickly things can change with 1 or 2 picks, and how a guy that's mocked in the top 10 for months, if he slips past what was his perceived floor because something else funky happens, can fall all the way out. So, Ant, when you looked at this draft, either big picture or specifically, like what's the thing that you learned from going through that exercise?
I mean, it was more so just how deep these positions are and also how quickly they can go. So we had the tackles, like a lot of them were going like in the middle round picks. And then, you see the Commanders come up and, go and get a guy that they, may really like. But I think it's really just going to be based off like how quickly, like, we start to see like people go off the board. So if we see a whole bunch of tackles go off the board and you're sitting back, hoping that somebody's going to, fall, I don't know. I think it sort of kind of like forces your hand to, get in before like, that guy also goes, because there's going to be other people thinking just like you are kind of thing. I think also like at receiver, we get to the 20s and we see a lot of receivers going at that time. So who's to say someone doesn't trade up from the second round to go get a Xavier Worthy before he falls to the Chiefs? Or you got Brian Thomas falling all the way to 28. So it's just, I think it's like a cause and react kind of thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, I think what was shocking for Logan and I when we did our first 3 or 4, however many we've done, is that same thing of like, wow, someone's got to fall. And sometimes it's Bowers if he doesn't go to the Jets at 10. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the tackles, and all of a sudden you're staring at Tyler Guyton in the second round, and you're like, no way. Is he going to fall to the Commanders at 36? That would be sick. Is it one of the edge guys? Or 2 of the edge guys? Could Chop or Darius Robinson fall into the second round? It's certainly possible. And I think like what we did actually feels like the least amount of fall guys, where the Commanders are all of a sudden like, dang, 36 and 40. We were hoping that one of these guys that we had a first round grade on would fall. And the reason is because the quarterbacks not going pushed everyone else up. Mm-hmm. The 2 guys that fell were Penix and Nix. And so when those 2 fall, that's 2 less tackles or 2 less edge guys, 2 less corners. Like those guys that would fall if Vegas or Denver takes quarterback, or Minnesota, depending on how other things fall, like or New England or LA or someone else, New Orleans. Any of those teams could theoretically go quarterback pretty easily and probably will take one at some point in this draft. But if they don't do it in the first round and Penix and Nix fall, it means they're taking someone else that other teams are more likely to want that aren't in the quarterback market off the board. But I think the other thing that you have to keep in mind that I think we didn't do a great job of because we were so focused on the first round is what's still available for you in the second. So we traded back into the first round because Amarius Mims fell to 23, at that point owned by New England. The Patriots obviously looking to take a ton of as many players as they can, really. So we made a trade with New England to give up 40 and I think it was like a fourth for New England's pick at 23, which they had acquired in our hypothetical trade where New England trades up 2-3 with Minnesota. So if all that goes down, you are looking at Washington taking Amarius Mims or Tyler Guyton or one of these tackles. And then all of a sudden we finish the mock draft and I'm staring at Kingsley Suamataia from BYU and I'm like, and Jordan Morgan's there at the end of the first. We wound up actually putting him, I think, with San Francisco. But like there's a couple of tackles that I'm like, I could live with that guy. Meanwhile, I don't know that there's any edge guys because Verse went, Latu went, Turner went. And then the next wave is kind of that Chop and Darius Robinson. And if they go, I don't know who the Commanders target at 40. I would say the way our board fell, we were also light on first-round wide receivers. That could definitely change. A.D. Mitchell out of Texas, Franklin from Oregon. Those guys could all very easily be first-round picks, and that pushes some of those guys down. But that, to me, is the bind that we kind of put the Commanders in. If anything, I wonder if we should have traded up for one of those edges. Maybe not above. You don't have to go above Dallas at 24, which is what we did to get in front of them for Amarius Mims. But could you have traded up at 26, 27 and said, all right, we're gonna take an edge player there because we feel like we can get a tackle later on at 36 that's still a lot closer to the player we get in the first round versus the edge drop-off is more significant. That would be my big question about what we did.
If you saw Jared Verse continue to drop.
Ooh, he's a tough one.
Because, again, at 16, the Seahawks didn't necessarily have to go there. They could have won offensive line. And then the teams.
I will say this. I wouldn't do it for Verse.
Okay.
Because I think he's much more similar to like a Cleveland Ferrell type of player.
Yeah.
The big 4-3 edge. He could actually probably play 3-4 end if you really wanted him to. But he's like a bigger body. He's not like the world's greatest pass rusher. If Latu starts to fall, and Logan and I actually did this in our last mock draft that we did. If Latu falls, he's the most polished pass rusher in the draft. Logan said it this way. About his fellow UCLA Bruin brethren, is that if you want 10 sacks out of a rookie next year, Latu's your guy. And the Commanders have a bunch of good ends that are like good, solid edge players. They don't have the pass rusher. Latu's the pass rusher. So if Latu finds his way in the mid-20s and you're comfortable with his medical, I would potentially consider trading up for Latu. If it's not him, I don't know there's anyone worth trading up for unless Dan Quinn thinks that he can repeat some significant percentage of Micah Parsons with Chop Robinson, fellow Penn State guy who's got insane measurables, insane traits, but he's not the player Micah was at Penn State. So it's not a one-to-one comparison at all, even though he's super freaky athlete who went to the same body type that went to the same university.
Yeah. So, I mean, my only question really is about the Commanders and where we stand, in terms of, I guess, trading up into the first round. I think it's become more rumored and talked about. I guess it wouldn't be rumored because, we're not getting much out of the regime.
Right.
But there's been small talks
speculated
about the Commanders possibly trading up. So you think the early to mid-20s would be what?
I think that's the spot, right? Yeah. Because I think that if you trade up in front of like Dallas and Philly and some of these teams that are not only in your division but are looking for O-line, that's where you go. Because the difference between, like, it depends on what your difference is between, let's say, Mims, Guyton, Suamataia, Jordan Morgan, Patrick Paul, right? If you've got a big gap between the first group and the second group, trading up's worth it. If you don't have a big gap and you think one of those guys is going to fall to you at 36, then you just stay pat at 36.
Yeah.
So that's the quandary. But I also think that there's a bigger chance that your ledge is a little bit steeper in terms of talent drop-off at edge versus offensive tackle, which is why I kind of question what we did and I'm like, yeah, we got our quarterback and our left tackle. And then I look at day 2 and I'm like, well, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
What are we going to do now? It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, we will wrap up the show with real things, real people said into real microphones. AKA at 30, the break are closest to 30 and the break closest to a new hour, because as established, we don't say top and bottom of the hour. It's me policing myself. That we've been playing the updates from Ted Emmerich down at the Masters from Westwood One, and we're playing one more for you, so you have the latest from Augusta in just a few minutes, and it has wreaked havoc with the end of our show, because I said we have another one, right? And he's like, yes, we do. I was like, okay, then what time is our show going to end? And Anthony, I'm concerned your brain actually exploded. I've never quite seen your wheels turn like that.
Yeah, because I added 3 minutes and 2 seconds to the time, and for some reason, it just
It was like
didn't resonate
it
with
was
me.
past your limit of numbers.
Yeah, well, right then and there, but I think I got it now.
Okay. You want to tell me? We can do it over the air.
You don't want to just allow me to throw up the numbers for you?
No, I don't trust it, actually.
What if I was to tell you I still haven't calculated it yet?
That would sound far more accurate.
Okay.
Should I go ahead and do real things though, because we're about to be out of show? Is that? Yep. Okay. You just keep doing the math over there.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Set into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Okay. Ant has given me in secret hand signals a time that the show is over. I've opened today's show folder and realized that while Ant was doing that math, do we have anything for real things?
Yeah, we have some stuff from yesterday, but I also have the LeBron bite when he was on his show with JJ Redick.
What I'm trying to remember what he said. It was very funny, and I'm glad you pulled it. I just can't remember what it was.
Well, he was talking about the Game 7 block and what was going through his head.
Oh, yes. The famous Andre Iguodala block. What was going through your head, LeBron James? This is from the podcast that LeBron is now doing with JJ Redick.
All I'm telling myself, I'm like, swish. Do not foul him. So, you guys, any of my teammates throughout the course of my career or throughout the course of that season, anytime that you see me trailing the play, all I need is a little adjustment from the offensive player, and I promise you I'll track it down. Do not foul. Do not foul. I told the guys all year, if you see me hauling ass, just make him, instead of just going in for a layup, make him change it a little bit. Just a little bit. And Swish gets a lot of shit today, right? Because of the blunder he had the following year, or 2 years later, or whatever it was, of not understanding the time and score, whatever the case may be. He executed that to perfection. He made Iggy change his shot just a little bit, and that's all I asked. All I'm telling myself, I'm like, swish. Do not foul him. So, you guys, any of my teammates?
Yeah. J.R. Smith, of course, being Swish. And he sure did block it. Sure did. One of the most iconic plays in NBA history. That could have been messed up by J.R. Smith foul.
Yeah.
And instead he waited till the next year, and then LeBron broke his hand on the punching a whiteboard. Yeah. After arguably the greatest single NBA Finals performance by a human being ever. Game 1 of the finals. LeBron against KD and the Warriors, and he should have won the game.
Yeah,
instead,
50 piece.
Yeah, that was nuts. That was nuts. What's it like playing against LeBron for the first time? Here's Aaron Neesmith on that.
First time you played LeBron in LA. Tell us a little bit about that.
So game day comes, I'm driving to the game. I call my dad. My dad was like trying to, give me a little pep talk. And I was like, man, it's Celtics Lakers. I haven't played all week. I'm not playing today. So the first quarter comes around. I don't get in. It's the end of the first quarter. I'm standing like in the back of the huddle. I'm watching Brad Stevens draw up a play. And I'm sitting there chilling. Get JT. I said, for real? I was like, okay. So I get in. I go to the corner. I'm standing there waiting for the Lakers to come out. Lakers come out. LeBron runs straight to me. So he does his little trot to me. And I was like, oh, boy. So play starts. JB's coming at me. I go to run at him to fake the back door. Man, LeBron is like at the block. And he was like, bro, you have not played. Like, you're not getting the ball first thing you come into the game.
I don't
Then LeBron's just talking to my teammate because he was guarding him. It was a timeout. He's standing in front of our bench. So he was like, this is what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to throw my hand up. I'm going to tell him to throw it to the hand. I'm going to put my right leg over yours. I'm going to fade away and it's going to be a bucket. 30 seconds later, he had him right here. To the hand. Boom. Bucket. Try to right back down.
That's different.
It's one of my favorite when legends do that. Larry Bird was notorious for that. Larry Bird once played an entire game left-handed because he was bored. And we can't be that far from LeBron doing that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All right, that's our show. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Team 980.